On this blue collar coder, we are going to go build this performance metrics gathering Chrome extension. I'm Jack Harrington, @Jaher on Twitter. Thank you for being here. But if you're like, what are you talking about? I have no interest in any of this. Let me convince you. So performance metrics are really important to understanding the speed of your site. So if you're getting people saying, hey, our site is too slow, in this video, you are going to learn about the metrics that you need to gather to figure out if the site is slow and create a baseline and do all that kind of fun stuff. So that's a really valuable skill to have just on its own, outside of the context of a Chrome extension. But let me convince you about Chrome extensions. Chrome extensions are a great way of either altering an existing website or just going and adding some functionality to the browser itself. It's just really cool. These are great job skills to have. And this is actually a nice little practical application that you can use as a starting point for your own Chrome extensions. Without further ado, let's just go jump right into the code.
All right, so this is the Web Vitals site, and this is what we're going to be using to gather all the information about the metrics of the performance on the page. Now, I've already actually built this application, or this extension, so I'm going to go and load it, and then we'll see what it looks like. So there's a dist directory in the build, and that's what you use. We'll bring that in. In this case, it's called perf extension, and right away, there's a background page. I'll get into what that is in a bit. And let's go over and do, for example, like Hacker News. Let's go take a look at that. Okay, here we go. Okay, so time to first byte was 17 milliseconds. First contentful paint was 222. Largest contentful paint was 222. This is an amazingly performant site, by the way. This is impressive. So what do these acronyms mean? Well, over here on the Web Vitals page, you get access to those. Basically, so these are the primary ones. So largest contentful paint, there's the loading performance, basically how fast the page starts up. It's saying that 2.5 seconds is good. If this is showing up in 222 milliseconds, I think we can all call that great. First input delay, that's really important if you are doing some sort of customer interactive site. You want to make sure that they can interact with it quickly. And then cumulative layout shift, that's basically telling you if your layout is kind of jumping all over the place. So it's a measure of visual stability. Now, not all of these are coming in all the time on all of that. Okay, so there we go. Finally, cumulative layout shift did come in, and there's 0 cumulative layout shift, which is, again, pretty rockin'. Although, of course, there's really not a whole lot of interactivity on this page in the first place, but whatever. Anyway, so, okay. And then there's one extra element that we haven't seen yet, and that's over here. If you go down to the perf extension, that brings up this page ranks. And let's try that again. Let's refresh. And yeah, that's weird. This should be showing up. So, oh, there we go. Okay, cool. So this is basically telling us, so here's the metrics that we've gotten so far. And you can go from site to site to site, and you can basically get a comparison table of the different metrics between the different sites. And also, interestingly, these all average over time. So if you were to just hit this a couple of times and get different numbers, then you get the aggregate on there. Oh, there. Right. It's telling us, hey, back off, man. Okay, so there we go. There's our kind of aggregate scores for this site. Now you can go, please go and have some fun with this. Change it however you want. That's fine. Make it do whatever you want. I'm just showing you all this stuff because I think it's cool. One, be able to make an extension, but also be able to go and understand like all these performance metrics and why they're important. And again, this is a great site, and it's linked to in the description. So please use it as a resource. Okay, so I'm going to go and get rid of this extension because we're going to go build it. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to start over here in our WP5 extension template. So I'll go grab that and then bring that into terminal. And I'll use npx dgit to go and dgit that. And let's look at how this all put together and constructed. So here is our Webpack. And the interesting thing about this particular Webpack is it's got 3 entry points. It's got the popup. That's the one that is in the address bar and pops up. So background is the script that is always running on the extension. And it's the kind of place that, at least in this case, we're going to go and store all the metrics that we've gathered over time. And you can connect to it from either the popup or the content script using messages. So we'll show you how to do that as well. Now, the content script is what is actually injected into the target page. And we'll get there in a second. Other than that, it's a very standard Webpack. There is this static directory that contains some additional stuff. There's the logo. There you go, blue collar coder. And then there's the manifest. Now, the manifest is what the browser looks to figure out, like, what is this thing, this extension? The extension is just basically a directory of stuff, and it always has to have this manifest in it. So here's the 3 basically pieces of interaction. So obviously you've got the name and the description on the top, but you've also got the 3 big pieces of contextual JavaScript here. Essentially, this is our background script, and this is what's going to be running all the time. There is the content script, and that basically gets run whenever you get a match here. And this is a special little piece, all URLs, if you want to just run this on, say, CNN or some whatever. CNN.com/star, something like that. So this is basically saying, run this content script on everything, inject that script into every page that you load. And then finally, the browser actions, this is going to show you what is going to come up when you hit in the address bar. So that's going to be index.html, which in turn loads popup.js. So, and then there's some content security stuff, some logos. There's additional permissions if you want to go and add those. There's other things that you can get access to in the browser context. It's actually really cool. So let's go over to source and then take a look at that. So the first one we'll take a look at is the content script. That's actually what's going to run on the page. Does absolutely nothing at this point. The background script does, again, absolutely nothing at this point. There's the popup.html. Now that actually generates index.html from the Webpack. So it's saying, okay, this guy is going to go generate index.html. And there is the popup.js, which is referenced by popup.html. And then finally in here, there's a React app, and that's going to run and say hello. So let's go and try this out. All right, so right away, things get a little bit tricky because some of this stuff works off the file system and some of the stuff works off the server in a hot reload. And so the first thing you need to do is actually build this. And that's going to create that dist directory that we then bring into the browser. And then you also want to start it. And that's going to show us the page that's going to end up inside of that pop-up. So now we go over to our extensions, manage our extensions, load one. Let's go find that directory. And there we go. There's my extension. Bring up background.js. That looks good. Now, if I bring this up on any page, hit refresh, and go to my console, we can now see that that content script.js file is getting executed in the context of that page. It's really cool. And then finally, we can go over here and bring up my extension. All right, nice. Okay. Now, some important things right away. This piece of code right here, the hello, and then I'll react, that actually is going to live reload. But everything else, including this content script and this background script, is actually going to just require a rebuild. So in some cases, we're going to be able to yarn start. Actually, majority of cases, we won't be able to do that. We have to do a yarn build because it's looking for JavaScript that's actually on the file system. So we need to keep an eye out for that. So now, job number one, we got to go and get the performance metrics off the page. So let's go and do that. So the first thing we're going to do is shut this down and then add web vitals. Now, the thing that's actually going to be using the web vitals is the content script. that's where the page is running. We want the metrics from that page. So that's going to be using Web Vitals. So let's go and bring that up. So what do we want to import from Web Vitals? To go take a look. So we've got a bunch of different Web Vitals we can get. We can get CLS, which is that cumulative layout shift. We can get FCP, which is the first contentful paint. So basically the first time that the browser actually starts drawing anything on the page that the user might recognize. We can get FID, which is the first input delay. We can get LCP, which is the largest contentful paint. And then finally, we can get TTFB, which is the time to first byte. That's basically how fast did the server get back and give us this page. So all of these functions basically take a callback, and that callback then gets the data. So let's first do that and just put it out to console log. All right, again, I got our yarn build. And then refresh the Chrome extension. And let's run it on the page. All right, there we go. So now the values are starting to come in. So let's take a look at this. You're getting a name for the value with a metric, and you're also getting a value for that. So that's really all kind of we care about in this case. So let's first go and just put that on the page somewhere. And to do that, we're going to use some vanilla JavaScript. So first I'm going to create an element. Make it a div. And then we're going to put it up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And then let's do a little bit of styling on it. We'll make it black and white just so it's very recognizable. And then finally, let's use a grid layout for this. Okay, looking pretty good. And what I want to do now is actually add that into the body of the document. All right, so now we need to go and actually put something in that div. So the first thing we're going to do is gather all those metrics. And then create a new callback function that takes that name and that value instead of the console log. And first, let's just store it. All right, so the next thing to do is go and build out the content by setting the inner HTML of infodiv to like essentially a table of the metrics and the value. So we'll take the different keys from all the metrics and then iterate through that. And then finally, we just need to join together. All right, now let's clean this up a little bit and then also change out that console log for gather metrics. All right, let's give this a go. And we'll try refreshing. And there we go. First contentful paint at 616 milliseconds. Time to first bytes 478. This is actually really looking good, honestly. Okay, so now we've got that running, and that's great on its own, actually. But we can do even better. We can actually go and send this data to the background script, which would then hold all that data, and then we can go to a pop-up and visualize it in our pop-up. So let's try that out. So the way that we go and send data from the content script context to the background script is using messages. And the way that we do that is to do Chrome, and then runtime, and then send message. And then the body of the message is an object. So in this case, we're going to say type. We're going to say that this is a performance metrics message. I'm just making this up. And then we'll give it the name and the value. And that's really it. We're actually, at this point, done with the content script. Now it's back over into the background script to go and get that message and then store that data for, again, somebody else, I guess in this case, popup, going and requesting that data from the background script. So what's really going to happen at the end of the day is that content script is going to send messages to background, and that's going to store the data. And then popup is going to go and send messages to background, which is then going to respond with the data. So content script gets the data, background script holds it, and popup script then asks background for that data, which it then returns and it displays. So let's go and build out that storage. I'm just going to leave the console there. It's fine. So to receive a message, you want to do Chrome, and then runtime, and then on message. And then we're going to add an event listener. That's going to take a function, which takes a request, a sender, and a send response method that we can then reply with. So the first thing we need to do is look at the type. And then look for that performance metric. And then we're going to go get the tab URL. And then we're going to store all of the data for a given URL by that key. So we're going to need to add that key first to the data. And now let's go get the metric name. And we'll go and add that into that data. Now, in this case, we're going to have a list of all the values and then the average. And so the next thing we need to do is push the new value into that array of values. And then we need to go and create an average from that. So we're going to use a reducer to do that. This is basically adding up all of the values in this array by starting with 0. And then for each value, we take the accumulated value and then add the new one. And then we return the accumulated value plus the new value, and therefore you get the total. And so an average is the total over the number of entries, so let's divide it. And there you go. There's an average. Yay! Now let's go and just send a blank response. And just a sanity check, let's go and console this out. And we'll rebuild. And then reload the extension. And then rerun. And that now we've gone and sent values. We'll go see what the background page is saying. Aha, here we go. Looks good. Looks like we're getting from this particular URL. Here's our averages. Oh, this is really good. So this is showing that we're doing a good thing. Now we want to go and actually show this in the context of that pop-up. So yay! Trying to get to a fully completed extension here. So one last thing to do before we get there is to go and get a way of getting this data from the background. So that's one more event that we need the background to be able to handle. So we'll just create a new type. Call it anything we want, really, but we'll call it performance metric request in this case. And all we have to do with that is just send the data back. Okay, awesome. So What do we need to do over on the JSX side? Well, that's actually remarkably easy. So first we need to go and get the data. So let's go put a place for that. And then we need an effect that's going to request that data from the background and store it. So now back over in the content script, let's go and grab this guy. And we'll say request in here. We're not going to send any additional parameters. And what we're going to get back is a callback. So that's going to have our data in it. And we'll just set the data to that. And again, we'll bring up console just so we can make sure everything's cool. Now let's build it one more time. And then start it. And from here on out, actually, we can just kind of keep restarting it. So we'll refresh here, get a couple of pieces of data or whatever. And now let's bring up our extension. Looking good. Now to see if it's actually coming out, we can do inspect on this, and we can see, haha. So now we've got our object that's coming in from the background page. That's awesome. So this is really good. All we need to do is format everything, and then we're going to be good. And even better, no more rebuilding. Everything now is in the React side, so it's awesome. Okay, so let's go and first get a list of all of the potential keys that we're seeing. So we'll have a place to store that. We'll call that columns. And it'll be an array. And then to get all that, we'll start off by just accumulating that. So each one of the items in data is a website, and that website has a bunch of values in it. So we're going to go and iterate through that sub-object. And get its keys. And for each of those, we're just going to set a value in keys to hold it. And then the list of columns is just going to be all of the keys from this keys object. All right, let's go down here and now format this. Create ourselves a table. All right, got a nice little header going on there. And now let's just iterate through all of those columns. And then create headers for each one of those. So we'll just divide up 80% into all the different columns. And then put the fields in there. Oh, here we go. Starting to look good already. That's great. Isn't that nice? Auto reloading like that. That is awesome. And now let's go and just dump our data. So the first thing we have is the URL. And then within that, we're going to put out the URL first. And you know what? These URLs can get really long, so I'm just going to slice it down. Okay, yeah, they does kind of slice around there. That's fine. And then finally, we just need to go through those columns and put out the data. Okay, so the issue here is that data.url.k is actually a list of all the values and the average. So we need to make sure that we're just showing the average. So let's first go and make sure we have an average. All right, let's take a look. Oh, looks good, but like super long there. So let's go and round that. And there we go. Nice. And let's go try out Hacker News or something. And now Hacker News is adding its own awesome performance to the list of all the other performance. And so you can kind of get this comparative metric as you go along. It's nice, very nice. Only one thing I'd add here, and that was make sure we get our keys right. So in this case, I'll just do there we go. That'll give us unique keys across the board. Let's see if we get any console logs. Nope, looks good. Really nice little Chrome extension. Actually pretty valuable. I think this is good stuff. Enjoy.
All right, that was fun. It's always cool learning about new things, like in this case, Web Vitals, which gives you some performance metrics to track the speed of your page. That's a great job skill. And also Chrome extensions. I've used Chrome extensions a lot for doing proof of concepts. So I think they're a really great job skill if you want to say, hey, look how this is going to operate on the site, and you go make a little Chrome extension and you actually have it do it without having a redeploy on the site to make that happen. That is a really compelling way to sell an idea to a potential client or a customer or your boss or whomever. So understanding Chrome extensions and how to make them is just a really great job skill that takes your JavaScript to the next level. If you have any ideas or questions about this video, be sure to put those in the comment section down below. Hit that subscribe button if you want to get access to these videos the day that they come out, or hit up the newsletter and get access to these videos a day earlier. Or even better, join up on our Discord server, which is turning out to be a great place to just talk tech, hang out. The person posting beautiful sunset videos from Mexico just a couple of days ago. It's just a really fun place and a really healthy place to hang out. But in the meantime, of course, from me to you, be happy, be healthy, and be safe.